All right, we'll go ahead and reconvene the meeting of the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners. We're still on agenda item 19, Commission Regulation 15-12, 2015 big game quotas for the 15-16 season. At this point, Mike, we're going to come back and work on the non-resident elk numbers, and we're on page 17 of our work packet on hunt 4261. And if you want to take hunt 4281, we can do that if you're prepared to do them both at the same time.
Chairman Mike Cox, so we actually need to go back to the 4251.
Right. I was one page off.
Okay, top of page 16, the non-resident antlered elk, any legal weapon hunt 4251. The changes in order to get close to 10% split on individual unit groups, and then to ensure that statewide 10% split to the non-residents for that weapon class. Here's the following changes for 062 through 068 early, 6. And then the late hunt also 6 through 062. And then down to unit group 111 through 115 early, reduce that to 12. And that will meet our 10% split between the resident rifle and the non-resident rifle.
Why don't we go through all the updates?
Yep, and then for the muzzleloader, the non-resident muzzleloader hunt 4256 on the bottom of page 16. The changes to get 10% split would be to 111 through 115, 3, and the 221 through 223, 2. The top of page 17, hunt 4261, non-resident antlered archery, 111 through 115, 4, and 221 through 223, 4. And that will provide a 10% split between the resident and non-resident archery. 4281, the non-resident antlerless rifle hunt, any legal weapon hunt, is not tied. That percent, 10% split does not apply to antlerless hunts. We did increase tags and increased unit groups from last year.
And that was, those adjustments on the seasons that were already set up, assuming is based on demand, what you guys have to do.
Yeah, we were looking at last year's application numbers, and we wanted to increase it so that we wouldn't have too many leftover tags, or try not to have any non-resident leftover tags, but we are seeing an slight increasing pool of non-resident cow hunters.
So I think what we'll try, Mike, let me know if I'm crazy on this, but we'll try doing all of the non-resident antlered hunts together. So that would be page 16, hunt 4251 and 4256, and page 17, 4261. We'll do all those together, and then we'll do non-resident antler list by itself.
Okay.
Okay. So any discussion or questions? Mike, discussion from you or questions from the commission on those 3 non-resident antlered hunts?
No.
Okay. County Advisory Board comments and inputs on the elk, non-resident elk antlered hunts, all 3 of them?
Spring, winter elk, on these non-resident hunts, all of our recommendations was to do the match.
Thank you. Other county advisory boards? Public comment in Reno? Public comment in Vegas? And Elko?
No comment in Elko.
Okay. Bring it back to the board. Any further discussion or questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve non-resident elk antlered any legal weapon hunt 4251 as presented by the department with the following changes. 062, 064, 066 to 68 early from 5 to 6. And then the late hunt from 5 to 6. And 111 to 115 early from 15 to 12. And to approve non-resident elk antler muzzleloader hunt 4256 as presented by the department with the following changes to unit 111 to 115 from 2 to 3. Unit group 221, 223 from 1 to 2. And to approve non-resident elk antler archery hunt 4261 as presented by the department with the following changes to unit group 111 to 115 from 3 to 4. Unit group 221 to 223 from 3 to 4.
Second.
Okay. So I have a motion on the table to approve hunts 4251, 4256, and 4261 with the changes outlined by Commissioner Wallace. Is everyone clear on that motion and those updates? Is there any questions or discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And we will stay on page 17. Non-resident elk antlerless any legal weapon hunt 4281. Mike, I think you already addressed this a little bit. Any additional comment?
No.
Any commission questions? County Advisory Board input on hunt 4281?
Fern Winder, Elko County Car. On this hunt, we have it increased to match the resident hunt numbers for the elk analyst to 10% match.
Okay, do you have those numbers, or is someone up here comfortable with what those numbers would be?
We didn't know if this one did the 10% match like the rest, so.
Okay. Check. Thank you. Any other county advisory boards? Public come hunt 4281. Las Vegas. Elko.
No comment in Elko.
Chairman. No comment in Vegas.
All right, I'll bring it back to the board. Are there any further questions on hunt 4281? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve non-resident elk antlerless any legal weapon hunt 4281 as presented by the department.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve hunt 4281 as presented. Any question on the motion or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion carries unanimously. And with that, Mike, I think you're taken care of. I appreciate your time and help on that. I think it went very smoothly. And what we will do is move to page 18, resident junior, mule deer, antlered or antlerless, archery muzzleloader, or any legal weapon hunt 1107. And Mr. Schroeder will take us through the mule deer hunts. I think, Cody, you had a presentation. Would you like to do that prior to the junior?
Yes, that would be, if I could do that, that'd be great.
Yep, and while people are switching sides of the table, just to let you know my thoughts on this, we'll go through all the resident mule deer hunts and try and get through them. We'll see how long that takes. Cody's gonna need a minimum of probably 15 minutes to update the non-resident portion, 10% match for any changes we made. So if this goes quickly, maybe what we'll do is skip forward to the bear hunt and discuss that, and then come back for non-resident. Or we'll take like a short 45-minute lunch, just depending on how long this takes. So just so everyone's kind of up to speed with what I'm thinking. But for now, we'll switch sides of the table and let Cody make the presentation.
Oh, you're gonna learn that later.
You got a couple good ones. You got 50 cents on the
It's two.
I don't know how to switch. I'm trying to do 5 things at once.
How you doing?
Very good.
a minute.
That's phase 2.
Warm up. You should start seeing and then cover.
I don't know. Business life.
Think he's gonna keep them? Yeah, now it's coming up. Jeez, it's driving me crazy. I'm gonna turn it off. Think of them.
Count it down.
For the record, Cody Schroeder, Department of Wildlife. Thank you to the members of the commission for allowing me to speak today. So I'm just going to give a brief overview about the kind of the status of mule deer in Nevada. I promise it won't take too long, but I just wanted to start out discussing some environmental conditions. It's been widely talked about at these commission meetings that we're in a state of drought, but I really want to emphasize that it's not just 1 year's drought. It's really, we're in a 3-year drought, and this is the drought monitor starting at the end of April back in 2013. The entire state of Nevada was over 61% in severe drought conditions. Fast forward to the end of April 2014, greater than 84% of the state of Nevada was in severe drought conditions. As you can see from the figure, a good portion of western Nevada and Pershing County were in the highest level that's monitored by the U.S. Drought Monitor. Here's where we are with the end of April when we wrote our status book this year. Over greater than 87% in severe. And that blob to the western side of the state that's in exceptional drought is at its highest level. So I've been asked a little bit about, what are the impacts to wildlife, what are the impacts to mule deer? And, to this point, we haven't really seen any kind of effects on adult survival, but it's the fawn recruitment that really, and the cumulative effects of year-to-year drought that's having its impact. Several of our mule deer populations realized declines, and we adjusted our models in some cases, but it's a direct reflection of some of these drought conditions. Just a kind of a glimpse of our survey over the past 10 years. Apologize for the axis there, kind of low down, but the take-home message is that basically our fawn ratio, which is the dashed line, kind of mimics our population estimate. Now you will see it deviate there in 2015, and I'll talk a little bit about that more later. But the blue dots are our buck ratio. The dashed line is the fawn ratio, and the bars are the statewide population estimate. Harvest has been pretty consistent. Here we're just showing the past 2 years. So on the left-hand panel, it's the buck harvest, hunter success rate by each weapon class. Really has not changed from the 2 years, and that's pretty consistent with the past several years, really. We saw a slight dip in rifle hunter success rate, but it's really the only difference of 2%. Same story for 4-point or better bucks, which is we kind of usually use that as an index of, sort of a quality hunting experience, the percentage of 4 points or better in the harvest. Really no change from 2013 to 2014. You see a really even percentage across weapon class. It was about 37% statewide when you combine all those, 4-point or better. Our doe harvest, so we've been increasing our doe harvest recommendations, and this year is no different. You can see where back in 2011, we were really at a fairly low level with our tagged sales. The gray bars are the sales, and the dots are the actual harvest. We're typically at about 50% on doe harvest. And so last year, we had our highest doe tags sold, and we were right at just over 1,200 on our doe harvest. This is again, it's on a statewide level. Percentage of 4-point or better, this is just showing total state. You can see here we sort of peaked in the 2008, 2009, we've kind of stabilized now at around 37% on 4-point or better. So we have, this is our tags sold in the gray bars and the total deer harvest, bucks and does included. And the thing I'd like to note about this is that back in between 2010 and 2011, the commission cut the department's recommendations fairly significantly, by 25%, I think it was, across the board. But then we, tried to combat that with a couple of years since then of increasing that harvest, and it's primarily due to the buck ratio. And I got another slide, but I just want to, the take-home message is we had to really account for that cut to get our harvest that we wanted in 2012, and since then we've been kind of slowly decreasing that, and this year, 2015 recommendations, no different. If there's one picture that I would like for everybody to take home when they're considering these recommendations, it's this slide. So here's that increase in our buck and our tag sales. It's a direct reflection of buck harvest in this case. I got the harvest in the gray bars. That red line is our statewide management objective of 30 bucks per 100 does. So you can see it's been all over the board. It really hasn't tracked the harvest until recently, where we caught up with our buck ratio, and right now, 2014, we were almost exactly at our statewide buck ratio. And you can kind of see the progress towards getting to that level. Now, on a unit-to-unit basis, we realize that some of our units are below objective, some of them are well above the 30 bucks per 100 does, but when we look at it from a statewide perspective, we're right where we want to be, and I really just want to emphasize that when you're considering your quota recommendations. So this is just a snapshot of, again, re-emphasizing our statewide objectives, 30 bucks per 100 does. We came in with an overall decrease in quotas of 7%. We did add the new doe hunt to 071 and 78. We had some concerns over our harvest, or our survey fawn ratios in that area. So we came in with a recommendation of 800 tags. Juniors, we felt that, if everybody was going to suffer on tags, then the juniors would, but we tried to accommodate them, recognizing that the commission has expressed, the desire to have every junior have an opportunity if they're given one. So we came in with a little bit lower, 4%. So we came 3455 is our total junior harvest or our recommendation for 2015. Last year we sold 3,381. And we got the most recent data from systems consultants. So far, 3,800, just a little over 3,800 have applied as their first choice for the first draw. I think this kind of graphically depicts that. So you can see first draw applicants now between 2011 and 2012, I think, is when the time that you could hunt as a junior increased. So that's why you see all these bars spiking up. But the red triangles are the first draw applicants, orange is the quota, and the greenish blue is sort of the final sale. So you can see, we have more applicants than we typically sell by it's all said and done. And that's primarily due to people, only wanting to put in for the areas closer to Reno or Vegas or the more considered quality areas. So the 2015 here is just the projected. That's our recommendation. That's what the applicants are right now, and we assume that this bar probably wouldn't change too much. That's about all I had, and we can jump right into the specific recommendations. Unless there's a question, I'll be happy to entertain a question.
We'll get back up here and then if there's any questions.
Sounds perfect.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Schroeder?
I got it.
Go ahead, Commissioner Bliss.
Just one question I have is the 30, your goal is 30 bucks for 100 does. Are you just looking at your statewide deal, or is your ultimate goal to get each hunting area, not unit, but each area as close as you can to that 30 bucks.
So that's our overall goal is a 30 bucks per 100 does on a statewide level. That's in our deer management plan from 2005. That's the most recent one we passed. However, recognizing sort of social constraints and, you know, just sometimes limitation of what the deer are actually doing, we have certain hunt units that, you know, as I mentioned before, are below that, and we have some that we recognize are above that, and we're fine with that. We really kind of want to address the creeping buck ratio phenomenon that happens when you cut kind of across the board, make major cuts, you see that buck ratio start creeping up. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Do you see any correlation between your in these units that have a lesser buck ratio to a lesser like 4-point harvest? Or is it 30, you know, once you get to a certain percentage, 4-point harvest increase, and is there a line there?
Yeah, that's a good question. What we see, that'll tend to stabilize, but if you make a fairly big jump in 1 year, that really seems to have an effect on the success of 4-point or better. I mean, there is certain limitations on, and it depends on the unit. Small units where you're hunting one mountain range, it might have a lot of road access. If you try to throw a bunch of tags out there to get you to your buck ratio objective, you know, you might be seeing some decline in 4-point or better. Those older age class bucks tend to be a little more savvy. They wise up real quickly to pressure, and it can dip on your success rate.
Thank you.
Additional questions on the presentation? All right, seeing none, Cody, I believe we're on page 21. And we'll start with resident mule deer antlered and illegal weapon hunt. Actually, I'm ahead of myself. Junior first?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start on page 18. Resident junior mule deer antlered or antlerless archery muzzleloader or any legal weapon hunt 1107. And just in turning it over to Cody, I appreciate A, the presentation to kind of get us primed up for this, but B, also trying to keep minimize some of the impacts to the junior opportunity. I personally appreciate that effort. Cody, any other comments on junior hunt before we get into it?
No.
Any questions or discussion by the board?
Just a quick question, Mr. Chairman. I guess if I understood the presentation right, and I know it's forecasting out, there would be junior hunters who might be unsuccessful in the draw, but there would be junior tags left over that they could go then get. Is that right?
That is likely correct. However, they would probably have to go to
A different area?
less desirable hunt area, maybe farther away from their town, or an area that has more opportunities, such as the Ruby Mountains or Area 6.
Understood.
Additional questions or discussion before we go out?
I've got one question for Mr. Conrad. On the junior hunts, you know, some of these units, we're looking at 50% reductions and 20% reductions from 2014 quotas and tag sales. You know, one of the problems I see is the kids' first choice. A lot of them are going to be unsuccessful in some of these popular areas for southern Nevada anyway. And I was wondering if there's any way that we can notify the applicants that a reduction is anticipated in specific units prior to the draw.
To be honest, I'm not sure about that one. I've never had to tackle that. You know, it's, for the most part, in terms of their hunter application choice, you know, there were some reductions, but overall the trends are similar to what past years. So that, for instance, 194, 196 is still a difficult hunt for junior hunters to obtain. So if they really wanted to just hunt, they could put that as their first choice. If they don't get it, they might go to less desirable down. That's true of the Lincoln County hunts as well. However, you know, without really knowing what the county advisory board recommendations are gonna be, or the final, commission vote until the draw closes, I don't see how that we would do that.
Yeah, and I would guess I would agree with Cody on that. It's really tough prior to the draw, just knowing, that this meeting was made. But maybe there's an opportunity after the draw just to inform those unsuccessful applicants that there are potentially over-the-counter tags available in some of the units that maybe they didn't apply for on the first round, something like that, just based on the timing and where we sit on the calendar. Additional questions or comments? Right, we'll open up county advisory comment on hunt 1107, the junior mule deer.
Sean Shea, Washoe County. We looked at this, and like I said, in 013, or I'm sorry, 011 through 013, we took straight across the board. And then we went juniors, archers, muzzleloaders, it doesn't matter. We went straight across the board and cut 25% off. I've been in that unit, I spent a lot of time in that unit, so I'm on the ground, probably a month a year in that unit during the hunt. And even if you talk to Chris, which I did, the deer just aren't there. They're just not there. The numbers are not there. And then, so what we did is, I don't know if you guys can see in the recommendations, like I said, we cut those straight across from 25%, everybody. So everybody, it's looking at the animals. It doesn't matter. We're not looking at the hunters first here. We're looking at the animals on the ground. And then in 033, we cut those 50%, and the reason why is if you go to their surveys, their fall survey, they counted 64 deer. In their spring survey, they spent an hour and a half to cut it short because they hadn't seen a deer. So, and I spent a lot of time on the Sheldon there, and we cut that 50% straight off the board for everybody. And when I say 50%, the juniors went from 20 tags to 10 tags. So there's not a lot of tags to start with, but I think the Sheldon is going to be an interesting thing now this year, because we're going to have more water. We're going to have what there is, because there's going to be horses on it. Give or take 10, I think, or 12 or something, until they get those off. So I think you're going to see an increase in vegetation. You're going to see an increase in water because the horses aren't there taking it. So I think it's going to be a very cool progress on the Sheldon to see what happens in there. And so that's what we did on, like I said, when you see our cuts, that's what we did, was straight across the board for everybody. And like I said, when each one comes up, I'll step up with our recommendations for those. Thanks.
Additional county advisory board input on the junior mule deer? Come on up. Like I said, don't worry about me calling you. You guys come on up and line up and then get to you.
Jim Evans, Eureka Cap. I'd like to do a little bit of a summation on Area 14 in general, and just make a one-time spiel on it, and then we can talk about the adjustments that we recommend on the quotas as we go through it. But I want to pass on some information relative to Area 14 regarding our recommendations and our analysis relative to population dynamics and the overall herd assessment. We do agree with the fact that Area 14, has a young and growing herd. So in terms of population dynamics, I think we're on board. One of the big issues that we deal with is basically the overall numbers of deer that occupy Area 14. And that's always a controversy, that's a continual controversy, but as far as the population dynamics assessment is concerned, I think we're there. I think we're in agreement that yes, we do have a young population. They're not growing as fast in comparison to, or the production is not as good. They're not growing in a comparable fashion in comparison to our adjacent units, and that has been addressed and identified by our local biologists. So from that standpoint, I think, realistically, we have some agreement. I've got some commentary here I'd like to share regarding Area 14 from folks, other hunters and recreational folks that use or that visit Area 14. High density and hunter concentration, in particular the west slope of the Diamond Range with limited available water. Drought, we've been talking about drought throughout the meeting here the last couple of days. Record low precipitation in central Nevada, and this is probably the 5th year for us in Eureka. The west side of the Diamonds, the deer are utilizing the fields for both forage and water. Farmers are irrigating later into the fall and fall season due to the drought. And that's drawn a lot of deer down into Diamond Valley and the transitional zone between the private ag lands and the Pinyon Juniper Complex in the adjacent foothills. Majority of the deer harvest that we are seeing are young immature bucks, so we will, a lot of folks are taking younger bucks towards the end of their hunt. So we're having some impact or effect on opportunity time and basically the overall quality of their hunt. ATV four-wheel drive access is excessive in or near the more popular drainages. Dry conditions and traffic creates undesirable camping, hunting conditions. We're going to stay in town at a motel. That's unquestionably, that's easily interpreted in this drought scenario. The young immature buck harvest trend is measurably high. And this has been the trend over the last several years. In 2014, 72% of the buck harvest was 3-point or less, and that's been fairly consistent at least over the last 3 years. Our 4-point harvest is at 28% in 2014, and that's below the statewide average of 37%. Area 14 commentary, the Diamond Range versus the Cortez Range. The Cortez has more available water, and unquestionably there's more spring and perennial, or better spring and perennial stream distribution. So if I was going to hunt Area 14, if I was going to recommend anyone where to hunt in Area 14, I'd probably send them to the Cortez Range, even though it is somewhat more restrictive in terms of access. The west side of the Diamond Range is by far more accessible, and that's another reason why we're seeing so many folks concentrated in Area 14 in that location. And what we've done with the elk hunt, and I mentioned it earlier, in order to relieve the density problems that we experienced initially with elk depredation hunt, and I can't remember how many years ago we got into this, but we divided that season into 4 seasons, and that really made a difference because we had a number of complaints relative to hunter density and congestion associated with the depredation elk. In general, certainly we want the hunters that draw these tags to experience a quality hunt relative to their time in the field and their overall experience again. I think we should really take a serious look at putting brakes on here and holding these numbers back in terms of our quota, reducing the number of folks in the field. By doing this, we believe we can enhance the opportunity time and strengthen our population dynamics and provide an opportunity to transition these younger immature bucks into that 4-point class. And I don't know how long we'd have to do this, but I think we should take a serious look at it and say, well, let's try it for a couple of years and see where it goes, because if you look at the harvest statistics, they're fairly clear, and it is evident that we've got a herd scenario that is not matching up in a comparable fashion from the standpoint of overall production in relation to our surrounding areas. And we're hearing it unquestionably from the majority of the folks that we talk to, that call us, that visit with us, that visit with our service providers in the town of Eureka. We're getting a measurable feedback from some of these folks. And again, I think quality time in the field is a pretty significant issue. It's a social issue, unquestionably, but we'd like to hold our quotas this year for all hunts associated with the deer hunt at the 2014 level. So I wanted to get that off, present that information to you folks before we get into the actual numbers, okay?
Okay, any questions before we leave the microphone? Okay. Additional county advisory boards on the youth deer hunt?
For the record, Paul Dixon, Clark County. We had a member of the public at my meeting on the youth hunt that was very concerned about the number of tags that were going to be issued, reduction in tags for 071, 079, and 091. And when I put, so I could give clarity to this board, because I will be leaving here earlier today because I have to head out, is that when I put something on here that says, follow the quota recommendations at Alco County CAB, what I did with the member of the public, I said, is I don't have a biologist here. When I look at the status book of what's going on, the reductions and other things, and I said, it'd be better for our county advisory board to follow the recommendations of the local biologist and the local CAB in this area if reductions or increases occurred in an area for that reason, and not to try to implement something from Clark County that doesn't have that biologic backup on it. So when I say follow that recommendation, what I'm looking for is if a recommendation is made by the biologist in that area to support this, then we would support that as a CAB, and that was an agreement of the rest of the CAB. So that's what those words meant, and I wasn't sure if it was clear, so I thought I'd say it up here. Thank you.
Additional county advisory boards for youth mule deer? Public comment, Reno? Come on up, Rex.
Rex Flower speaking on behalf of myself. On Washoe County's recommendations, I fully support where they're trying to get to with all their mule deer hunt recommendations, except for the youth. I would like to see the youth be given that opportunity that was recommended by the department. But just so you know, I do support the rest of what they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment, Reno, on youth mule deer? Las Vegas?
No comment, Chairman.
Elko?
No comment in Elko.
Okay. Bring it back to the board. Any questions or discussion at this point? I've got a couple. Go ahead, Commissioner Bliss.
Just one question, and I should have looked it up, but what's the overall hunter success on the youth hunt?
60%.
60?
It's page A5 in the status.
Okay.
Additional comments, discussion? I guess the only comment I had in looking at some of the changes that were recommended, I completely understand where Washoe's trying to go. This is an opportunity hunt, and the cuts on those two units, I think both of those units always have more first choice applications than tags available. And so when I look at it from that standpoint, I get the consistency thing. I personally have trouble swallowing that on a youth hunt where it's more of an opportunity and trying to get kids in the field in areas that are pretty popular. Personal opinion on that. As far as the Eureka Lander recommendations in 14 and 15, I think if you look at the tags sold in the first choice applicants, I'm more than comfortable with Eureka's recommendation of 155 in area 14. I would probably prefer going with Lander's recommendation in 15 just because while I don't think there were 68 first choice applicants, so to me that suggests that there's probably more demand than that 65 would suggest. So I think I would be comfortable with the 100 just based on looking at the numbers and the demand in these areas and knowing that the youth hunt is really more of an opportunity. I understand some people use that as a trophy opportunity for their youth, but at the same time we got a lot of kids who just want to get out and experience it. So that's where I'm at. Anyone want to take a shot at a motion if there's no further discussion or questions? I'll take a shot at this one since I was the one that piped in. So I would make a motion to approve Hunt 1107 Resident Junior Mule Deer Hunt as presented by the department with the following changes. And that would be for unit 141 to 145 to go from 170 to 155, and for unit 151 to 156 to go from 140 to 100.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion or question on the motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So we'll move to page 20, Cody.